And hello, everybody, and welcome to the Weekday Warriors of Wrestling for Sunday, August 22nd, 2021. I'm Eric Clancy, joined as always by Patrick Kelly. And it has been a super eventful weekend. We've
It's like a Monday Night Wars situation almost.
it
Look
really
who
does.
showed up.
I know, yeah, no, it's like we've had three surprise debuts in the past 3 hours or 3 days rather. It's been really cool and really big, and I think the only place to start is with CM Punk and AEW Rampage. And it's if anyone's listened to us for long enough, you've probably heard a lot of our like fantasy booking ideas and things that we've said. Like, oh, these certain things like work as far as booking goes. Like, always kind of have a heel on top. You should always build have one storyline on the main storyline on the back burner when you're finishing up your previous storyline, and to have like surprise and shock. Um, this would kind of CM Punk's debut kind of goes against what I would normally think of as like a great angle or a great piece. And I think my gut reaction would have been like, oh, CM Punk comes and he's like, he's like, oh, I should have been in WWE. I didn't want to come here. Like, this is like, and you can create this new like villain character for AEW. And like, to me, that would have been like the most like, oh, this is a new thing. It's an interesting thing. Um, but they didn't do that. And I think that's probably fine and better and a good idea because, watching that show, I think CM Punk could have, shot somebody with a gun and would have been cheered in that arena. And like, it wasn't like, oh man, I've never seen anything like this before. Like, this is like groundbreaking. It wasn't, but it was like emotional as hell. It seemed as real as things get in professional wrestling. And there was just so much passion there. And it was also surreal. I mean, he came out to Living Color in Chicago, but it wasn't on WWE TV. And that was really the only thing we had seen him do for the, when he was in wrestling from 2006 to 2014. So, everything I said, like there would have been no way to do any of that. And I think you need to look at the limitations and see like what's able to be done. Like there's no way you were going to bring him in there and and he wasn't going to be the most beloved guy there. So I think it was exactly what it needed to be. I think it was an emotional day. It was a anticipated event. I think like it got more mainstream coverage than maybe AEW ever got. It was insane the amount of like tweets and discussions that were going on for it. And the two things that this and last week have done is really like establish Rampage as not a B show. I mean, of course, by nature, Dynamite has the better time slot. It's always going to be the A show, but like one of the things that like can make something become a B show quicker than it otherwise might is if you treat it like that. For a while, Thunder was like a big deal, and Hogan and Nash and everybody showed up there. AEW had a title change on one and CM Punk's debut on the other. So they really use this stuff to launch and make Friday Night Wrestling a destination for their fans. But I mean, to go back to the event, I thought it was emotional. I thought it was, I thought it was a kind of a powerful segment. How'd you feel about it, Pat?
I was kind of anticipating how it was going to go down the way it did when and I was watching the show with my girlfriend, and we were kind of like, I think they're going to start off with Punk because there's no other way they can start off a 1 hour show. They've got to start with Punk. And sure enough, it was the first thing they did. It's what the crowd wanted. They were cheering for him right as the show started, before he even came out. And AEW delivered, gave that crowd and everybody pretty much exactly what they wanted. And like you said, it was emotional. It felt like a huge happening, like something big was taking place. And I think it hit all the right notes. And then we got to setting up the match for the pay-per-view. It's all right, we've got his first match lined up. So let's follow this story as it continues and unfolds. And I kind of had the same idea you did, where I was thinking, man, what if he gets this amazing ovation and then he just turns fucking heel on the company, on Chicago, on everybody, and maybe even professional wrestling as a whole. And they do something with that. But as a feel-good segment and a start to the CM Punk experiment in All Elite Wrestling, I think it was a home run for them.
Yeah, and I mean, there's always time to do that later, right? Like you can always like there's no reason that you can't make that change down the road, but maybe not right as he starts, like is the best idea to do that. That said, we've got CM Punk's first match back since the 2014 Royal Rumble, which is, nuts when you think about it. And he's going up there against Darby Allin, which is like a big spot for Darby. I mean, Darby's definitely going to lose, and he probably should, but like, it is a primo spot. Darby Allin's name has probably been seen and read and said by more people than otherwise because of the attention Punk's bringing there. So it's good for him. It's good for a young guy they're building up. I know some people are going to be like, well, you know what? Are you just having like Punk come back to squash the young guys? Eric, you're always the guy who says you need to build new stars and continue to make them big deals. And yes, I agree with that. But like, you've spent a lot of money on Punk to be like a guy that's going to be there each and every week. And as long as he doesn't like kill Darby Allin, I think we should be okay. So that's not to say that I don't think Punk should ever like not put anyone over, but I mean, he's going to be positioned along with Kenny and Cody and the Bucks and Moxley is like one of the top guys in the company. So you can't have him lose his first match. So, but I think it's a great spot for Darby, and it's like, it's really added a little bit more. It'll be really interesting to see what the buy rate is for this show, to see like what the difference that it makes,
And I gotta say, like, CM Punk having a stare down with both Darby Allin and Sting as they look down on him from the rafters is
pretty surreal.
It's one of those visuals like, man, there's something I never thought I'd ever see. It's like Peter Venkman, Bill Murray, and Ghostbusters. Well, there's something you don't see every day.
Yeah.
It's just something crazy that I would have never imagined.
It's insane to think of, Darby's journey when he debuted against Cody and had that draw, and which was odd at the time because you're like, Cody should probably be going over this guy. But then, you track until now and you're like, holy shit, what a rise. What a 2 years this person has had. And you realize that like with Darby Allin, with MJF, to a lesser
Jungle
extent,
Boy.
Sammy Guevara and Jungle Boy, AEW has made a lot of these young new stars like pretty big deals. And there's more guys that they're going to be developing, guys like Wardlow, guys like Nick Camarado. So like they're going to try to build these guys, but so Darby, Sting, and CM Punk in a segment is just like, it's like 3 different generations. It's insane.
And I don't know why, but that like tree branch face paint that Darby had, I'm like, that looks really flipping cool for some reason. And it's different from what he normally does. And I guess he just wanted to do something special for a very special occasion, but it looked great.
Yeah. So I think the rest of this show was all about like, hey, we're going to have a ton of people watching this. I early like estimates seem to be it's going to have like 1 million viewers, but like maybe above a 0.40 in the demo, which would be insane for a Friday night show at 10. I mean, Dynamite has like that's like good Dynamite ratings. So like that's nuts. If that were to happen, we don't know yet, but they know they're going to have a lot of people watching. So the whole idea was like, hey, let's get our guys out here and let's put them over. And they did that. They had Jurassic Express go over in what was a good match. They had Jade Cargill squash Kiera Hogan, which they probably should, because Jade Cargill looks like a freaking Greek goddess, and like has been poised for big things ever since they kind of like tapped her to go within the Shaq angle. And then they had Moxley, who's one of their top stars, take down Daniel Garcia, who's a guy that has been kind of put in some primo spots lately. So it was all about like showcasing their stars. And I thought that was smart and good. And like, the idea, it's WWE did it the best for the longest period of time. They don't do it so well anymore, but they bring in celebrities and big names, and they say, hey, look at all these other things. And they try to make the other guys into bigger stars. They don't do that much anymore, but AEW is kind of doing that.
And this show kind of reminded me of an old school Saturday Night's Main Event, where if you go back and watch a lot of those old Saturday Night's Main Events, they were very front-loaded shows.
Yes, yes.
They would give you the Hogan match either first or second.
Yep.
Yeah, because they knew that's when the most people would be watching. And I think this is the case. It's like, look, everyone's tuning in for Punk. They all want to see Punk. We'll give them that right at the beginning. And we're going to lose audience as the show progresses because it's a Friday night. But we're going to use that time wisely to establish some people and just kind of, it may seem like just fluff matches to most people, but it was also a way to showcase some people too.
And the hour flies by. Like it reminds me of old wrestling shows when they weren't 2 hours long. I mean, I know like Prime Time and Super and some of them were like 2 hours long, but there were so many 1 hour wrestling shows. And it Raw used to be an hour for the longest time. And
till Nitro showed up.
I mean, it was almost 2 years before it went to 2 hours, though.
Yep.
Nitro went to 2 hours by May of '96. I believe the episode Scott Hall shows up on is the first 2 hour Nitro, and the first 2 hour Raw I think is in March '97. So like it took a little bit there, but Raw was an hour, and it was always like Raw. It necessarily wasn't always the best show, but like a bad 1 hour show is way better than a bad 3 hour show. And that's what we have now. A lot of cases is a bad 3 hour show. And like Rampage flies by. It's like, wow, this is like, we don't have any more, like, we need more time for this stuff. And you always want people to be wanting more. You never want them to be like, I've had my fill. That's terrible. You're like, whether you're like selling like Doritos or wrestling, you always want to leave people wanting more. So I think the past two episodes have been like really great, and like they've opened with it. Like I wonder, Patrick, if they are going to do kind of that Saturday Night's Main Event going forward, because so far they've done Kenny Omega and Christian open the show, and Punk opens the show. So they had their like kind of big matches open the show, and I wonder if that is the strategy. And it's interesting, and it's different, and it's kind of like Saturday Night's Main Event had the SNL slot, I believe. So they were on at like 11:30, 11:28ish, and would go on for like, were Saturday Night's Main Events like an hour and a half? Did they have the full SNL?
Hour and a half.
Hour and a half. Yeah. So they had the full SNL slot. Yeah. So we'll see where they go there. They've advertised CM Punk for Dynamite in what I think should be a huge Dynamite show. And I mean, not like the rest of the show, because like honestly, like the rest of the show is kind of like, yeah, it's okay, but like, what's Punk gonna say? Like, that's kind of the hook that this is going on. Also, this guy has a great travel schedule, because so far he's been on 2 episodes, and one was 15 minutes from his house, and the other one is going to be like a 3-hour drive or something in Milwaukee. So like, like he did okay so far.
Yeah, and as far as like Punk is the main draw for next week, the Monday Night Wars hung its hat on that for so long, where it's like, you just need the one thing. It's like, how is Austin going to respond to what Vince did last week? And that's enough. So as long as you have that hook, you're fine, I think.
And speaking of the Monday Night Wars, which is happening this day with the way this competition is heating up, and the way, like wrestling is hot right now. I cannot like some people are confused about it because they're like, well, it used to get more people, more viewers. Well, yes, there were more people watching terrestrial TV and cable TV. There aren't anymore, but there are more people watching wrestling than other shows. It was like, Patrick, did you see all the Olympic like articles that came out when the Olympics were on? It was like it was like Olympics ratings down 48%, Olympics blah 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 blah, Olympics blah blah blah, and then you saw the rankings, and they're like, the Olympics have the top 20 spots in the ratings. I'm like, oh, okay, so the Olympics are down, but they're above literally anything else. They're above anything except for the Super Bowl. Oh, okay, yeah, because the difference, they were comparing it between 2016 and now. I'm like, holy shit, 2016 and 2021 is a fucking lifetime. Like the amount, like with streaming, with and even comparing it, they would even compare it to 2012 with the London Olympics. And I'm like, the amount of time, I mean, that is like light years, like with the way streaming has evolved, with the way TV has evolved, with like, I mean, holy shit, WWE was doing like 6 million viewers back then or whatever, you know? So like, well, they weren't doing 6 million, but they were like, the point is things go down. What the idea, and this is where, although WWE is on top, the concern, if you're a WWE person that works there or likes them or whatever, is that the rate of decline is less than everything else, which, I mean, in WWE's case, it's not. I think WWE's is like 3 times what the average cable TV show declines each year, which is not good. Whereas AEW has remained the same or growing. So that's, eventually those lines will meet in the middle. It'll probably happen in the fall. If they have CM Punk and Daniel Bryan on the show and football is back, you're going to see AEW beat WWE in the demo, which, holy shit, if I had told you that 2 years ago when Dynamite started, you would have slapped me in the face.
No, and I always felt like, especially in the last year or so, I'm like, there's going to come a point where AEW Dynamite could potentially beat WWE in the ratings. Not necessarily because AEW has this huge rise into the stratosphere and just has the best numbers in the world, but WWE's product is so stale and so boring, and more people are leaving it. And it's like, I could see WWE being downgraded to a point where AEW is able to overtake them just based on that.
Well, there's this stink of WWE. There's this stench to it that is like, it's very uncool to be associated with. Like most, like, I think wrestling fans like are like, oh, AEW is this like hot new company or whatever. And like there are WWE fans. Obviously, there's more of them than there are AEW fans, but there is also a feeling among the wrestlers that like, holy shit, this place sucks. Nobody seems to want to be there. Tonight is NXT TakeOver. There was debate for a while whether Adam Cole was going to re-sign or not. And with, Meltzer had reported a few weeks ago, NXT is going to be completely redone. It's going to be a totally different thing. People were like, oh, no, that's not true. And then Nick Khan just had a interview with Ariel Helwani, and he said, yeah, we're redoing NXT. So this is really the season finale for NXT, which basically confirms to me that Adam Cole is gone. I do not think he's going to resign. I think he's doing this final show as a goodbye. And because NXT was really the only place he was safe. And with that now essentially gone, I don't think there's anything. Patrick, if your girlfriend and some of your best friends were in another company and there was this company where no one that's like you is treated well ever, what do you think you would choose? Like it, and it's not like the money is going to be that much different.
Yeah, no, to me, it's a no-brainer. Like, I think Adam Cole would fit in there very well. His friends are there, his girlfriend's there. And there's also got to be a part of him. It's like, more people are watching my friends and my girlfriend than they are watching me. I want to be into the party where they are. I want to be over there having fun, because NXT, and we talked about this when they first went to Wednesday nights going head to head with Dynamite, it sucked all of the appeal that NXT had going for it, which was that it was the smaller brand. That was always the appeal that NXT had. 1 hour shows, slow and steady pace to get to the takeovers knock our socks off. But by going on USA and going to that 2 hour format, it just completely destroyed the appeal, the fun, and the charm that NXT used to have. And now it's just, it feels like just an indie fed with a budget. And that's all it feels like at this point. And there's nothing exciting or enticing about it. So if I were Adam Cole, I'd be dying to get out of there.
Yeah. And I think he will be. And like, then you have the opportunity, like maybe Bray Wyatt shows up, and it'll be interesting to see if he does go, what sort of character he creates. You want to be careful because you want to make sure you have enough time for all these talents, but like
AEW might do their own brand split.
Yeah, right.
Their roster's getting so big. I mean,
so the good thing about having a big roster is like what you can do is what WWE used to do when they had like, you kind of got to divide your wrestlers that you feature by your TV time. And if you have a good ratio, what you can do is you could not overexpose everyone. You're like, I mean, Cody, Hangman haven't been on the shows for a few weeks. Moxley hadn't wrestled in a few weeks. Malachi wasn't on the actual show last week. The point I'm making is that like they don't have everybody on every single show, and that way nobody gets super overexposed, and that way you can rotate guys in and out. Like, oh, let's say you want to give people we don't want them to see too much of Orange Cassidy or Chris Jericho or whatever. Well, take them out and put in MJF and put in Jungle Boy instead, and that's the idea. Then you can like, you don't have to burn through every single match you have in like 3 months because you just have so much time to fill. You've got enough people and your product is fresh. And that's the difference. Like you can, doing what WWE does has a cost, right? There's a cost to like having everybody on every show and having 3 hours of television on Monday. And like, you're like, well, it makes money. And you're like, so I understand that from a like Wall Street point of view, but from a long-term point of view, you're diluting your brand. And we've said this for the 9 years they've had this. And for the 9 years that they've had this, they've lost viewers and their shows have gotten worse. And there will be a tipping point. I know people are like, well, you guys keep saying that and then nothing ever happens. I'm like, they just got the Peacock deal. Well, you know what? Peacock eventually, if WWE has 500,000 viewers or like 0.2 in the demo at one point, let's say they have that, they're not going to give you $1 billion over 5 years. They're not, because they need people to watch. They need to have people watching the products. So eventually there will be a tipping point. Is it going to happen next round of negotiations? Will it happen the round after that? I don't know, but there will be a tipping point, because at a certain point, and that's how bubbles happen. You keep doing these things and you're like, well, it's fine. And then it's not fine. Sears was like on top of the world until it wasn't, for years and years, Amazon didn't make any money. And then of course they made all the money. And it was because they had a vision that they adhered to. And eventually they're like, yeah, we're losing money, but we're going to get it. We're going to make it eventually if we keep on this route the way we're going. It's just, there will be a tipping point, and it's a very short term, a very like, oh, let's do this and that. But like, they're, like I said, they're losing viewers 3 times the normal rate. Like yes, their deals are good right now, but that's because TV and cable are desperate to have anything that can draw eyeballs as people are running to streaming. So like they're paying more and getting less. But it's it'll pop eventually. But
it's funny that you mentioned Sears, because in my girlfriend's hometown there's an old Sears that's like an abandoned building, and it looks like this haunted ghost town place. And it's like, you're absolutely right. Like the mightiest brands can absolutely fall. It could happen, and it's a slow and steady decline into obscurity, and that's typically what happens.
I mean, Blockbuster is a great example. I mean, like,
it's the best example, probably.
There's that great story of Blockbuster, like Netflix saying, "Hey, you can buy us," and they didn't, and like everybody's heard that story. But, I mean, people say things like, "Oh, well, WWE is too big to fail; they'll never go out of business." I'm like, well, that's not. You don't know that. Like, I mean, who would have thought that? Like we mentioned Blockbuster, like you mentioned Sears, like some of these other like stalwart brands that like
America Online.
Yeah, there you go. And you can say, well, that business model was never gonna. Well, yeah, hindsight's 2020. I mean, somebody will look, maybe WWE goes out of business, and then somebody's like, well, they kept doing X, Y, and Z, and the things we're saying right now. I'm not saying it's gonna happen. I'm just saying, thinking that something is like completely safe or like can't be harmed is like ridiculous, I think.
And you want to talk about dead brands. WWE over the last few years have made a lot of the same mistakes that WCW has made.
Yes.
Relying on the past, shows are too long, too much programming, and they just kind of book themselves into oblivion. And the only thing that's kept WWE, because I really do feel like if they had a WCW nipping at their heels that was like legitimately like the Coke to their Pepsi, they wouldn't be allowed to get away with the stuff that they're getting away with now. And they wouldn't be allowed to get away with the creative decisions that they've been making for the last 15, 20 years.
Look at their decline over the past 3 years since AEW has existed. When there was an actual alternative, people started to choose the alternative. They're closer now than they were 2 years ago. And like, that's losing market share. So like, it's people like having an issue with the product and the issue is presentation. It has been presentation for 20 years. It has been the way that they do things, in how they talk, in how they present it, and how, oh my God, let's talk about SummerSlam. Which it's funny, I'm complaining about WWE. I actually like SummerSlam. I thought it was a good show, actually. But I mean, just like something that was annoying me, because I haven't watched WWE since like WrestleMania. So I forget all their like corporate weirdo speak that they do, and like the completely unnatural way they sound when their commentators are talking. Every time they talk about beating somebody, they just say, what if you were able to knock off this guy? Oh, look at all these names that Roman Reigns knocked off. You can knock up, like they fucking love this word, this phrase, knocking off people. It's Patrick, holy shit, I heard it like 100 times on that broadcast.
It reminds me of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where the detective goes into Eddie Valiant's office. He's like, the rabbit cacked him last night. I was like, I have never heard this term in any other movie, any other story, or any normal conversation that I've had with anybody else. And that's exactly what I'm thinking of as you're telling me this.
But wait, you've never heard capped?
Cacked.
Wait, spell that word.
CACKED.
Oh, yeah. No, I hadn't heard that either.
Yeah, the rabbit cacked him last night. I've heard capped. Everyone's heard that.
Yeah, that's why I was confused with what you're saying. But okay, yes. No, I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, but that's an actual line of dialogue from the movie. And I'm like, I've never heard that in any other movie ever since or before. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, no, they were talking about knocking off people. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Are you going to kill somebody? What? Actually, one of the best things I heard about like, over like hyperbole in pro wrestling is like somebody asked Scott Hall how Spooky Fingers came along, which, if you don't know, is what the Clique would do when they were like jokingly afraid of somebody, and they'd like put their fingers in front of their face and like waggle them about. And Scott Hall was like, well, it came from the fact that like, people would always say, I'm going to kill you. And then we'd be like, what? You're going to kill us? Oh, okay. Like, you're not going to kill anyone in a wrestling match. He's like, you're going to beat somebody. That's the point. He's like, you're going to pin them. He's like, you're not going to kill them. So it was making fun of hyperbole in pro wrestling, which, like, I don't know, knocking someone off is just a weird ass term.
That's like mafia speech.
It is. So let's get to SummerSlam. Shockingly, I know lots of people were annoyed about this show. Fine. Like this was a more enjoyable show than I've seen WWE put on in quite some time. So I'm going to be okay with it. They were in Las Vegas. The show was way too fucking long, however. I mean, holy shit, they're like, we're going to be done so you can see the Pacquiao fight. And they did not do that. It went to like midnight, I think.
Oh, Jesus. Was it that? I didn't see SummerSlams, but I didn't know it went that long.
Oh, yeah. It's
and wow, going head to head with the Pacquiao fight. It's pretty daring.
Well, it was right across it was also in Vegas.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So they're like, oh, we'll be done. And then you can get over there. But I hope people didn't have tickets to that, because they did not make it. Anyway, yeah, so I thought it was a pretty good show. It was 10 matches, 11 if you count the pre-show. Um, Started off with a hot tag team title match. It was RK Bro, Randy Orton defeating AJ Styles and Omos. It was fine. The crowd was super hot for it, which made it much better. It was just about like, hey, we can't beat Omos, so let's just beat AJ Styles. So I thought it was a good opener. Titles change hands. Crowd was into it.
Who'd they beat? They beat AJ?
Yeah, they pinned AJ. Yeah.
Okay, because I gotta say, like, yeah, AJ and Omos, that was one of the things that impressed me the most at WrestleMania this year, but I haven't watched them since. So.
Well, they protected him, like AJ can take the pin. You probably don't want your 7 foot, like 5 weird, like troll creature, monster, giant, whatever you want to call him, pinned in an opening tag match. So they protected him.
Yeah, no, I think that's great booking.
Yeah. They had in the worst match of the night by far, they had Alexa Bliss, who so for those of you like the Laps fan or things, like, we don't really watch WWE anymore, so my reactions to this are just like this is the first time I'm seeing half this shit. So like Alexa Bliss is like Bray Wyatt now, apparently. She's like the Fiend, and it's fucking terrible. And she's wrestling Ava Marie with Dewdrop, I guess. So Alexa wins. But the whole so I've never been a huge Alexa Bliss fan, but this is the most ill-suited gimmick possible, because okay, so she's got this she's got this Chucky doll essentially that can talk to her or some bullshit. And I guess when you mess with the doll or something, Alexa Bliss gets fired up. The problem is Alexa Bliss is like 2 feet tall.
Fired Up by Cass.
Hold on
Amazon Music.
Oh man, hold on 1 second.
Did you set off Alexa? I've done that so many times.
Yes, I've set off my. We're gonna have to call her something else. Alexa off. Okay, we turned her off. That's insane. Okay. So I got to be careful when I mention that certain superstar. Wow.
Thanks, Amazon.
Yeah, thanks so much. Okay, so Bliss, who is what we'll call her, is like 2 feet tall. So whenever she gets fired up, when she's gonna fight back, she's throwing clotheslines at I don't know, 7 foot tall Ava Marie or however tall she is, and it looks ridiculous. It's like when it's like when you haven't built up your character in an RPG well enough, and so you're hitting someone and it's making ding 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 noises, so it doesn't hurt them. It looks ridiculous. So she's clotheslining her and having a fired up thing. I can't tell who's supposed to be the good guy. It was 3 minutes and 50 seconds, but it felt like 10. It was pretty bad.
I'm thinking about if you're gonna give the Fiend to a female performer, I'm thinking of immediately in my head, you've got Nikki Cross, who they have playing a superhero right now. She could pull off the more dangerous, gothic side of that. Or if you want to go the hot route, because Alexa, obviously people fawn all over her because of her looks. If you want to go that route with it, Scarlett Bordeaux would be a better fit for that, because she plays it really well with Karrion Kross. Alexa, this is such a bad miscasting that it's dead on arrival. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, I would have her be a plucky underdog or whatever, but whatever. So that was pretty terrible. Probably the worst match of the night. Then we had Damian Priest and Sheamus. This was okay, actually. I mean, I've always kind of liked Damian Priest. I think he's got a cool look. I think he's different than a lot of people, which I always appreciate, because I hate shows where everybody looks the same. He wrestled and beat Sheamus, and holy God, can you believe Sheamus is still with this company? I mean, he has been there since 08 or 09, and it's just been he's at this perpetual same level forever. He does the same thing. There's nothing wrong with him. He's fine, I guess, but it's just there's ever since I saw this guy, there's something that did not interest me about him.
Yeah, it's weird. They tried the world title run main event thing with him, and that did not work at all. He's one of the worst world champions they ever had. So he's kind of been perpetually stuck in this mid card position. The best run he ever had was the tag team with Cesaro, but that's no longer a thing. So now he's just like, I feel like whenever I see him, I'm just looking at a time warp to 2009. It would be like if like Haku showed up and was wrestling Shawn Michaels in 96 or something like that, where it's like, oh, hey, this guy's still around for.
I mean, he showed up in 2001 and wrestled The Undertaker.
That is true. That is true. He did. And no knock on Haku. Please don't kill me.
Yeah.
A scary dude.
Then we had a tag team title match. We had the Usos against Rey Mysterio and Dominic. And they really, really tried to start some like Rey Dominic feud during this without doing anything. But it's just like Dominic was like such a goober at times that it's just like, oh, this guy's turning heel, isn't he? I haven't watched this show for more than like 2 hours, and I can tell this guy is going to turn heel. The Usos won. It was fine, I think. But let's get to the most controversial point of the evening.
Yes, one of the big headlines coming out of this week.
So Bianca was supposed to defend her title against Sasha Banks in a rematch of WrestleMania and like a major deal. But if you've been following for the past week or so, you know that Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks have not wrestled. All their matches at house shows have been canceled. I don't want to speculate on any sort of reason, but Sasha Banks certainly does love anti-vax posts. And it's funny how no one said anything about why she's out. That's just all I'll say, because what do you think happened? And also they're in Florida all the fucking time. So, I'll give you 3 guesses. Anyway, so they, for whatever reason, knowing that this match is not going to happen, they play the 3-minute hype video. And then Bianca comes out, and my wife is immediately like, oh, this girl looks super cool. I like her a lot. And that must have been a kiss of death, because then they're like, oh, Carmella is going to come out. And then I was like, oh man, I thought maybe it was like Becky or something. And then Becky's music hits and everybody goes nuts. And she beats the shit out of Carmella and throws her out. And then she's like, let's have a match right now. And Bianca's like, yeah. And then Becky like shakes her hand, punches her in the face, hits her with her apparently new rock bottom finisher, which I did not know was a thing, and pins her for the title. So this went over with everyone, I think even in the audience, like a lead balloon, and everybody seemed to hate it. Like online, people were upset. Nikki Bella, like they asked her in like some red carpet thing, like, what was your favorite moment of the show? And she's like, I'll tell you what my least favorite moment was this. I thought it was bullshit. Everybody was upset. They thought it like, they squashed her, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to give you guys a hot take. I did not think this was that bad. I don't think it came to me. I don't think it came off as a squash. I think it came off as a fluke. I think like she's going for the handshake, she punches her, she hits a surprise like finisher, and she pins her. Like it was like one of those top guy loses and they're not expecting it type deal. And I think that's okay as long as you follow it up with like Bianca, like, hey, you know what? Like I wasn't ready. And then maybe you have a second match and they go back and forth and whoever wins or whatever. I think you can do that. But like, I think they were put in a tough position because Sasha was gone and they weren't able to deliver on that match. And Vince's thing is always like, well, you want the replacement to win. I don't know why he always thinks that, but I do understand with Becky coming back, why you would want to put Becky over. She's like their biggest female star. And so I get why they did what they did. This was their way of protecting both of these top stars. And normally they'd be like, Eric, you would hate 50-50 booking. I'm like, I do hate 50-50 booking. However, these are your 2 people that you have built up, and Becky and Bianca have kind of gone over most people. So like if it's a Kofi Kingston situation where Bianca is just never near the title again, then yeah, that's bullshit. I will agree with that. I don't think that's the case though. I think you're gonna have like Sasha come back and maybe she feuds with Bianca to get the shot at Becky or whatever. I don't know, but like I didn't. To me, it didn't seem like she was buried. That's my opinion. I know that's probably very controversial based on the prevailing sentiment, but I did not think she got buried.
Now, like I said earlier, I didn't see the show, so I didn't see exactly how it played off or anything. But coming out of SummerSlam, when I looked at the results early this morning, the two things that automatically stood out to me were what happened in the main event, which we'll get into that in a bit. And obviously Becky Lynch was back. I was like, whoa, wow, really? What happened? And I read about it and she beat Bianca for the title in 30 seconds. I'm like, holy shit, that's a major headline. So if that's what they were going for to kind of capture people's attention, they certainly did that. Again, I don't know how it came off on TV, and I don't know how good or bad it made Bianca look in the execution or what they're going to do with this moving forward, but it did get my attention, and I think Becky Lynch is a huge heavy hitter to have back for sure.
Next up, we had Drew McIntyre and Jinder Mahal. Drew beat Jinder in like 5 minutes, which is exactly what that should have been. Drew's like kind of been pushed aside on the Raw side, so you probably would just want him to dominate somebody on that show, so that's cool. Then we had the triple threat match for the women's championship. Holy shit. Nikki Cross is ridiculous now. Like, this is one of the most embarrassing gimmicks I've ever seen. How did this even happen, Patrick?
I don't know, to be honest with you. The last time I watched Raw, I believe it was the show after Money in the Bank. And that was the first time I saw Nikki in her whole superhero getup, and I was like, when the fuck did they start doing this? And it was terrible. And she walked out with the belt, and I'm like, who made this call? This is like a double whammy bad decision. It's like she should not be playing this character, and she should not be the champion right now. This is the worst. What's going on?
So you see Charlotte there, and you see Rhea, and you see Nikki, and it's like one of these things is not like the other. The other two look like big stars, and she just looks like a schlump and weird. It's just like they love doing this shit. They love, like, first of all, I don't think Vince knows anything about superheroes in 2021, like at all. Like I think if he saw one, he'd be like, where's Superman? Or like, he'd be very confused. Secondly, they love doing this shit. They did it with Hurricane and Rosie. When it was superhero
SHIT.
Oh my god, how
that was
funny
was
that?
Eric.
Yeah. It was funny because it was a bad word. They did it there. They've done it like they did that thing for a while when Ricochet was like, he's a real life superhero or something. I mean, that's better than this. Like, don't get me wrong.
I know Vince really likes Mighty Mouse because he keeps wanting to make, in his own words, a Mighty Mouse. That's what Neville was supposed to be. But
yes, I don't understand. I don't understand that at all. Like, the only thing I know Mighty Mouse from is the fucking Andy Kaufman song. Like,
which is a great bit, by the way.
Yeah. It's so weird that it's always like, so you always hear the same thing with Vince. There's like three things you'll always hear him say, or like hear other people say that he said, or whatever, but it'll be like, he's looking for that Babe Ruth character. He always says that. Like, if you ever want to see, like, we wanted Hogan to be the Babe Ruth character. We wanted Brett to come and be that Babe Ruth character. He also does, he wants a star for the Latino markets. He always says that, and then when he has one, he just treats him like garbage. And then he's like, "Wait, why don't we have a star in the Latino markets?" And then of course he wants that Mighty Mouse character, which I guess is a small person, like, or smaller performer that is like superhero-esque or something. I don't know. It's really
weird. He must have loved Rey Mysterio, because Ray checked two of those boxes. He was a Mighty Mouse and he was a star for the Latino market.
Yeah. If only Rey Mysterio could have been that Babe Ruth character. He kind of can be. He's almost all three. I wonder.
Yeah, he's about as close to all three as you can get.
Yeah. Okay, so Charlotte wins the match, which, like, is never surprising, because they're like, we gotta get this title count up. Those are rookie numbers. We gotta pump those numbers up. So Charlotte won because she wins like everything forever, which is like fun. Like I was expecting nothing different, so it was just like, oh, okay. So yeah, it was fine. I just thought like Nikki was like it was fucking ridiculous, and her like name is actually like it's like almost a superhero, Nikki ASH, and I was like, that's like almost a superhero, Nikki, almost a superhero. It's like remember when Britt Baker was a face, but they would be like Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, but DMD stands for Doctor of Medical Dentistry. So it's like you don't need to say it at the beginning and at the end. Um, but they're like, and it was like stupid. So then they turned to do her character. And now it's like hilarious. Well, this is like the non-self-aware version of that.
Hey, if DC can call themselves Detective Comics, hey,
Oh yeah, yeah.
go
I
for it.
always forget about that. It's like a WCW wrestling was World Championship Wrestling.com. Remember it was WCWWrestling.com,
Yeah. Yes.
which
Oh,
presents
man.
weird problems because I think AEW's is like AEWrestling.com, which is correct, but also sounds weird as hell.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Branding's hilarious, isn't it?
Yes, it's so fun. All right, so next we had probably the best match of the night. It was Edge and Seth Rollins.
Is it true that Edge is doing the Brood gimmick for this feud?
Yeah, he did it for it. He came out of a ring of fire, and he had his long like leather coat, and he had the Brood music and stuff. But then he got like the walkway was like a million miles long, so we like got through the Brood song and then stopped, and then he did his Edge like pose and music and stuff. So he got the best of both worlds. But the whole thing was like, oh, I'm going to be more ruthless than you are, and like they just kind of beat the shit out of each other, and it was a good match. And Edge went over Seth, which is probably what you need because except for the Royal Rumble, I cannot remember Edge winning a pay-per-view match since he's showed up.
He did win that first match over Orton at WrestleMania, didn't he? The one that went on for like
Yes, I meant since he won the Royal Rumble.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're right. Yeah, I can't think of one either.
Then we had Bobby Lashley defeated Goldberg via referee stoppage.
And based on the time here, I have the card pulled up. Based on the time, they actually tried to have a real match.
Yes. I think they're going to like have them do it again in Saudi Arabia because that was announced on this show that it's happening in October. So if you're ready for Crown Jewel, baby, you better pull it up.
I'm all set.
Yeah, he worked on the legs until Goldberg couldn't stand. So they're probably going to do something else. And like Bobby Lashley bores the shit out of me. Like, I'm not that I'm like, oh, I want Goldberg to come back and squash all the current stars. I mean, Bobby Lashley's also like 45. So like, okay,
I'm okay with him because he's like a jacked up monster.
Yeah.
You beat people up. And it's like, I'm looking at the roster. It's like, who would be the best choice right now? It's like, go with Wrestling 101 shit. Like, put it on the monster guy. So
yeah. And then we had our main event. We had Roman Reigns and John Cena. This match was good. So the thing that I'll say about this match that it had going for it more than the actual in-ring action of it was that it felt like a big deal. It like the crowd was definitely into it. It felt special because you hadn't seen John Cena in a while. And as you and I know, Patrick, of watching the entire John Cena era, he is much better in smaller doses.
for sure.
So, and when he's not talking, it's great. So yeah, he Roman Reigns went over Cena, and then in what I'm assuming is a reaction to Friday night, Brock Lesnar's music hits. Brock Lesnar comes out looking absolutely ridiculous. He's got a beard, which is fine. He's got a man bun, which is not. Not that I have a problem with man buns. I at one point had one myself. It's weird because it's like such a tiny bit of hair and it's pulled. It's really weird. Just pull up a picture if you need to.
I've seen it. The thing with man buns is that I don't associate that with badasses that could rip my face off. And so it's just weird to see one on Lesnar. Yeah. It just doesn't fit his persona.
Yeah, it's just odd. It's very odd. Anyway, he comes down And I've had a lot of people say like, oh, well, Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar have had 100 matches. I'm like, yes, but not with Roman as the heel, and not with Heyman with Roman. And I think that's enough of an intrigue that you can do something cool there. I don't know if they will, because it seems like this was a WrestleMania match, and it seems like they're like, well, we're going to put it on Saudi Arabia, which to me just sounds like, oh, why just put those weird fake garbage matches on there? Like, remember when they had like Randy Orton and Triple H after like not interacting forever? They're like, we're gonna have a match in Saudi Arabia, and you're like, oh, okay, I guess so. But they're putting like actual storylines in Saudi Arabia, so that's less good.
Yeah, because those shows. Here's the thing: none of those shows have been good because it's a weird atmosphere. It's a weird venue. It just has no feeling or passion behind it, and then they get all these big ass matches, and I'm like, but why? They don't. I don't even feel like they care all that much.
Yeah, no, I don't think they do. It's just it's a PR thing, but they're really happy if nobody calls attention to them chopping up journalists, or making sure women can't drive alone. So like, yeah, it's what a great country to do business with. Yeah, so that was SummerSlam. I actually I like the show, believe it or not. I mean, maybe it's just like, oh, wrestling with crowds and stuff. And like, I don't know. I thought my biggest complaint would be how fucking long it is. Like, holy shit, these shows don't need to be this long. Like, they do not need to be this long.
Especially when their weekly programming is so long.
I know. It's like, Jesus Christ, we got it. Like, ugh. Yeah. Anyway, anything else or we need to talk about?
I think we're good. We got all the big ones.
We got the big
Punk and
ones.
Becky. Those were the big headlines.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens tomorrow. We'll see what happens on Dynamite. And I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. But for myself, Eric Clancy, alongside my partner, Patrick Kelly, we are
signing off.